have I reached a decision about which way to take this tree? Just have to find out. It's time to do the first pruning of this year of my big Chinese Elm Bonsai. As you can surely see, my big Chinese Elm Bonsai has grown like absolute fury. Is that a scale insect? The last time this tree made an appearance, I was debating whether to remove the lower branches and train a crown higher up for more of a literati feel, or whether to keep the lower branches and go for more of a full-bodied crown, more like a tree standing on its own in a field. If you're new to my channel, my name's Darren and my videos are all about charting my journey growing bonsai trees. I'll share progressions of the trees that I'm growing, as well as lessons that I've learned and tips that I've picked up along the way. So if that sounds like something you could be into, please consider subscribing. Now the question is this turntable going to cope? I think it's going to be okay, but I think if I'm going to continue to work on bigger trees, I'm going to need a better turntable. If you've got any suggestions, let me know. First order of the day is going to be to get rid of some of the obvious stuff that I don't need. In Marai language, that's cleaning. So pruning to clean up weak interiors, downward growing shoots, vertical growing shoots, anything obvious that we really just don't need. So I'm just going to come in, take away some of these interior shoots to start with, create a bit of space. A couple of vertically downward growing shoots here. They're just going to be in the way. And there's a weak one there. That can also go. This one's on the inside of a bend. There we go, off with those. Let's just take those stubs back a little bit further. A couple of bits on the inside of a bend here. We can get rid of those. In terms of the length of this branch, I'm going to cut it back, but I'm going to leave plenty of grace in case I've misjudged. So I think for the initial work, we'll go back to there, reassess once the final tree's taking shape. Okay, so now onto this branch. I think what I'm going to do with this branch is very tall. I think I'm just going to, again, definitely don't want it this height. For the sake of my sanity, let's get it pruned back a little, just so I can figure out where I am with the tree. So now that I can see what's going on with the tree a little better. Right, this piece coming around to the back, that's coming into the trunk. I don't hate that, but it's a bit low. It's the piece above it that I prefer for coming inwards. This piece has got a lot of twigs. There's some weaker bits on the inside here. Let's take those out. Drop these end pieces back. I'm just cleaning out some of these weak interiors. Vertical piece there. Weak interior. Weak interior. Inside of a bend. Another inside of the bend and a funny angle on that one. So I'll leave some of these smaller bits just for the time being. Not 100% sure we'll need them, but they can stay for now. Pruning. When I come to pruning for style, I'll have a much better idea of what I want to keep. Having cleaned all these obvious bits, I can see what's going on with the wider tree. Okay, that's looking better. Don't need this bit. That one can come out. Same with this bit as well. Don't need it crossing over the trunk there. And then there's just a couple of weaker bits as well. That can come off. Just to clarify what I mean by weaker interior pieces, these two pieces here are coming from some secondary structure. And they're like really small, really piddly, really weak, shaded out by everything that's around them. So I just know that they're not necessary because of where they are on the structure and their weakness. Here's another one here. This is also an example of one, but because of its position and its direction, I might leave this one. It might come in handy. And there's another example just here. This little branch down here is growing straight towards the trunk. I'm never going to need that in that position, so that one can come out. I dare say the same about this one, although it's not as weak. It's also going straight across the trunk there. Don't need that one. Some more examples of weaker interior growth here. Although it's a long way from where the branch originates from the trunk, where it is in relation to the trunk is still pretty close. So it just makes it super easy to snip these off and not worry. Don't need to spend ages agonising over every little twig on a piece of material this size. Just cut them off. I'm really not sure about this piece. Probably don't need it at all really, but let's just clean it off first so we can make a more informed decision later on. Quite a few wispy little bits. What's this bit all about? Right. Multiple interior bits that we don't need. Interior bits, interior bits. Interior shoot. Multiple. Multiples, lots of multiples. How are we looking for length on this? Right, it's a bit long. I'm just going to drop it back a little to make it easier to access the other stuff. And just off to the back of the tree, this branch comes up, goes around the back of the trunk, and is actually as tall as the actual apex of the tree. But I've left that there for a reason, so I'll come back to that. But I will drop the length of that back a bit though. Where's this one coming from? That's coming from there, over there. So again, I've left this one long for a reason. Then I'll come back to that one, but let's just make life a bit easier for myself. And then the same goes for this one. And starting to make a bit more sense. Right, so I don't need this one because it's pointing down. We've got a branch here. That one also, and that one also. This one's smaller and weaker, so let's chop that one off. And this is a strong one, but it's actually coming from the least usable position, so that one can come off. Got two coming from this bit. I don't know if I'll use one of them, but I definitely don't need two coming from there. So that one can come out. And then here we've just got a weaker piece coming from the same place as that one. Same there, same there. Get rid of those because we've got a nice strong piece we can use there anyway. So we don't need those. Dead twig there. Nice, couple of dead twigs on this bit. Whoop. Take out those dead twigs. Coming on nicely now. Tell you what, this dead root has been bugging me for absolutely ages. Lovely, that's looking better. That's looking better. Dead stub here. Take that bit off. Weak shoot there. Weaker bit around the back there. In terms of cleaning the apex up, I think we're there. Does anyone else out there forget why they bought a tree in the first place, and then when you prune it you're like, oh yes, yes, I like this tree. I finished cleaning out all the unwanted bits and bobs, and I'm in a much better position now to see what's going on with the structure, what I want to keep and get rid of. But before I do any further work, let's just go outside and I'll give you a quick update on one of my previous projects. So here are the little guys that I wanted to update you on. A few videos back I showed the process of growing elm from root cuttings, link down in the description. And I've had, of the 7 cuttings that I've planted, I've had 6 produce plenty of growth, and one of them looks like it's got some buds forming. We'll have to see how that one gets on. but 6 out of 7 is not bad at all. As you can see, we've got a multitude of shoots coming from the cut end. I'll have to thin these shoots out so we don't get inverse taper actually. And this is the one that hasn't produced any growth yet. I'm not sure how well you can see, but there's a couple of very small green dots just by my fingertip. I'm not sure if this one's going to succeed, but fingers crossed, here's hoping. It's the following day now. I ran out of time yesterday. It seems that today I've woken up as a teenager again. Spots, foul mood. No, there's nothing new there, I guess. Okay, let's talk about the apical region now. We've got precious little branches from sort of midway and up to here. We've got very little branches to work with, which is why I'm letting these lower ones grow to try and fill in some of that negative space. Now hopefully we'll get some buds further down. The more I prune this apical region, the more buds I'm getting. When I first started working the tree, none of these bits existed. It was just a long piece up to the sky. So I'm hoping after this working, we'll get maybe some buds further down. We had 2 structural pieces here. So yeah, this central piece just went on and on and on. And I cut it back. I probably shouldn't have cut it back so far, or I should have waited until I had the tree on the bench to make a more objective decision, but I don't know why I did that on an impulse. There you go. It is what it is. Anyway, so now I need to make the decision. Do I use this piece to create the apex, or do I continue building the top of the tree from this and treat this as a branch? Or shall I remove this as it's become thick as a branch and it's potentially going to create a bit of a bulge coming from the inside of this bend, and use one of these in its place? So we've got this one here, that one to the other side. That's the decision I need to make. I'd really love to have your thoughts on what to do in this apical region, so if you wouldn't mind dropping me a comment down below, I'd really appreciate it. I can cut back some of the length of these lower pieces, bearing in mind that I want to try and let light through to these lower bare sections of trunk, just in case some buds want to develop there. I'm going to shorten them, even though they're not as thick as I want them. This branch is coming off at a very acute angle to this section of trunk, so I am actually going to just remove that one. It's in close proximity to some other branches on the same side, so I won't use that. Clean up that cut a little bit, and there's some taller bits towards the back here. I'm going to reduce the length on those. Again, cutting back the length of some of these pieces. I want to keep them. I'm happy that they're going to survive, but by cutting back, I'm just hoping to let more light through, stimulate hopefully some back buds further down. Now with this piece, last year everything just ran away from me and started thickening much quicker than I really wanted to, which was part of the reason I think why I chopped this section off. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to prune quite hard up here. Regardless of whether these branches are thick enough or long enough, I'm just going to be really quite strict with how far I'm cutting this stuff back. Leaving a small number of leaves in place, but just cutting right back fairly indiscriminately. Being an elm, this is all going to sprout new growth, and so if I do decide that I need length and thickening later on, I can just let any resulting branches run. But for the time being, my priority is hopefully stimulating some back buds. Okay, let's drop that back to the 2 there, and this piece as well. Go back to 2 little pieces there, a couple of little pieces there, a couple of little pieces there. How's that? Same here, and nip the growing tip off that. Just want to knock out all the auxin that's built up in this area by taking off those growing tips. Hopefully we'll stimulate back buds. So now we can see a little bit better. Let me just talk you through what's on my mind. I could cut this thick piece off and introduce a nice bit of movement to use this as the apex, but that's going to result in a wound there. Now with this piece here, I'm quite confident we could heal that, but if this is the front of the tree, that wound is going to be looking straight at us. I suppose once we fill in some of this ramification over time, if there is a wound there, it won't be as noticeable, but it's just something to consider. Another option is to keep both of these and disguise that little bit of invest taper we've got. Then the other option is to remove this piece here. The angle of movement from here to here isn't as sharp. That, you know, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I suppose it's up to individual taste. The wound from removing this won't be as noticeable. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, what you would do in this area. I'm not going to make any decisions now. I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts are. I'm going to address this branch now. This is the first branch. It comes from the trunk here. I know from the previous video that a lot of people think that the branch is coming from the trunk too low to be part of the design, particularly if we go for a taller tree. But I'm going to continue to leave it in place for two reasons. The first is to give it a chance to be part of the design. It might be that as the tree evolves, it would be nice to have a branch this low down. And secondly, because we can clearly see from some of the dieback that's occurred elsewhere on the trunk that this tree is prone to dying back. So if I were to just chop this branch off, there's a risk that this dead section would progress further. I'm not sure if I want that to happen or not, so I'd have to handle it carefully if I did chop this off. For now I am going to leave it in place, but I am going to shorten it back to a secondary piece which is facing approximately upwards. Cut it back. I'm leaving a bit of a stub on this one, and I'll put a bit of callus mate on that cut site. Lovely. It might be that we drop this branch down with some guy wires or what have you, but I don't think we want it any longer than it is now. Maybe tweak this out a bit, remove one or two of these, we'll see what happens, but for the time being that's fine, I'm happy with that. Onto this branch now. After cutting back the apex down to its bare bones, I can now see that this is far too long. It's going to shade out this area of the trunk, so let's have a look at this one. The reason I've left this one to become so long in the first place, and I wired a bit of movement into it, is because we've got no branches on the trunk here, so it fills some negative space. So I'm in a bit of an awkward position now. I'd like to cut it back to let more light through to this section of trunk and maximise the chance of buds forming here. At the same time, I don't want to cut it back so far that I'd have to regrow it to fill in negative space. And there are some side shoots around that we could use. I'm going to cut back to this side shoot. That's going to let light through still, while still allowing me to fill in this negative space. Right, so I'm going to have to use the saw to make this cut, because it's a bit thick for my branch cutters. It's going to be a bit awkward being so flimsy, but don't want to ruin my branch cutters. And a nice bit of callus mate again. So I've left quite a big stub there, but I'll actually come in and clean that up properly later. Okay, so looking at this branch then, we've got a nice piece with some movement down here to fill in this negative space. This branch is more in an upwards orientation. We've got this one in the middle. Don't need this one, so I'm going to cut that one off. And then looking at the length of this branch, I don't think we need to come out. I think this is about as far as we need to come out for this branch. Whether we use that length, we'll have a look in a bit. I think that's a better length to start with. Definitely lets me see what I'm doing. It divides into 1, 2, 3 here. Although this middle section has a nice bit of movement to it, it creates a very straight line from the main piece. So I'm going to prune that one off and we'll just have this bend here with the side branch. I think this is in a slightly better position to fill in the negative space here anyway, so I'll go with that. Up here, this piece is in competition with this piece is in competition with this, and this piece creates a straight line. So I'm going to cut this bit off. I'm going to have a nice branch here, a nice bit of movement here, and a much less cluttered appearance. Again, I'm going to come in with my saw because that's just a bit thick for the branch cutters. Staying outside of that shoulder. I've got to be careful not to damage the branches that are nearby. So I'm coming nice and steady through there. And as I near the end, I'll ease off even more. Getting towards the finish now, I'm just going to support that. Not pushing into it at all, just letting the saw do the work towards this end section. There we go. And I did exactly what I was trying so hard to avoid. Jabbed into that branch, but I think I've got away with it. Let's have a look at the story so far then. Okay, so the length of this branch, that's looking okay. We've got a bit of excess weight in this area, so we'll address that in a sec. Up here, this is too tall, so that needs a bit more pruning work. Alright, so there's a bit of excess weight on this side, just down here. A bit of pruning work to be done there. And towards the back here, we've got a bit too much length on this branch and this branch. Let's have a look now. This branch here has been trained as a back branch. I'm going to take it back to there where we've got some strongish growth, and this branch up here is to fill in some negative space if we don't get buds on this area, again towards the back, but it doesn't need to be as long as it is now. Let's see, where do we want to go with this one? Could do with a bit of wire, it's quite straight. Going back here, that gives us that to play with if we need it. And then out here, let's see. I don't hate the length of this. The movement's a bit of an S curve, but I don't hate the length of the main structure there. I am going to come in here, just going to nip that end off, and we'll come back to some stronger side shoots on this bit. So this piece is coming from down here. Don't actually need that piece at all. So let's cut that bit off. Clean out some of these unnecessary side shoots. And the same here. Well, that's feeling much nicer. How do you want to go with this bit? Okay, I'm going to take that little, let's take off this little weak bit. So it goes boom, boom, and then boom, and then lengthwise this can come back. Nip off the growing end there. Nip off the growing end there. That's looking better on that one. And finally this can come back quite far. Interior bit can go off there. That bit So the intention with this piece was to fill in some space behind the trunk down here. So I'll leave this one a little longer just in case that's still the plan. Cut back to a directional piece. There's a weak guy down here that can come off. Don't know that I'll need these pieces. Weak section, weak bit, interfering with the branch next door. Don't need that guy. Still interfering with another branch that I do want. And this bit I'm going to prune back to a bit growing in the favour. Prune this bit back to a section of, prune this back to a twig that's growing in a favourable direction on that one. Drop that back to that bit. Take out some of these weaker pieces that I don't need some of these weaker bits. That one's on the inside of a bend and it's, oops, that's, oh dear. And another one on the inside of a bend, not going to need that one. That's not necessary, and neither is this one. And just quickly, if this branch comes further down here somewhere, I think this one can come more into this space here. So I'm going to drop this branch here to that piece. And then cut that bit off. It's not a very clean cut. It comes to something when this old knife's sharper than my bonsai tools. Oh dear, oh dear. That was a terrible cut, so I'm going to put a bit of callus mate on that, even though it's not very big. Dear, oh dear. I am going to put a bit of wire on a couple of these apical branches, just because I know that they tend to rocket off and thicken like crazy. And if I get this wire on now, getting this wire on now is just going to mean that I don't have to then try and forcibly bend thicker bits, as long as I'm careful. As long as I'm careful wiring these fairly thin branches, we'll be okay. Just got to be careful not to knock these leaves off or crush them. The wire's a little heavy for what we're trying to bend here, but it's okay. This one being the finer piece, I'm going to have to be really careful. It's going to be super easy to damage this, so just going to have to really do my best to support the branch as I wind the wire around. Hold the wire in place rather than the branch, that way I can move the wire around the branch rather than the by holding the wire in place rather than the branch, I can wind the wire around the branch without excessively damaging that branch. And as you can see, what I've got here is the wire is nicely wrapping round rather than ending up with a result that looks more like I've bent the branch around the wire. There we go. Pleased with that. Okay, I'm going to close that off. So I'm going to take the initial movement of this piece up, but then I'm going to come down to create quite a sharp angle. I can probably come a bit further than that. There we go. Don't want it to be 90 degrees. Just back that off a little bit. And then come in that way. Finally finish up, pointing the tip upwards a little. Just use that tag to bring it more upwards. How's that looking? A little bit S-shaped. With this piece, I just want to very carefully just reorient it slightly backwards. Okay, so that's taken on a bit of an S shape, but what we're going to hopefully get is some back buds. There's not really a lot of length in this branch to play with, but just a little bit of movement initially just to get it started. I can refine that movement over time. The apex is probably going to be cut back, grown, cut back, grown, cut back, and we're going to get lots of buds to play with. So I'm not too concerned with some of the S shapes. I can simply refine and build on that structure as time goes by. And let's just tweak it. Position just a little bit there. Starting to fill in some of this negative space from above as well as below. Yeah, that's looking better. I think some more wire is needed throughout these branches, but I'm going to leave it at that for today. I want to know what your thoughts are with this apical region in terms of some of these structural pieces, so hit me a comment down below what you think about those. I think for the rest of these branches I'll use some wire to pull them down, pull this into a better position. This can come further round, you know, I'll tweak that and update you. But folks, I'd be really excited to hear your thoughts on that apical region. What would you do with it? I still haven't decided whether to create more of a literati crown somewhere up here or whether to embrace some of the lower branches. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. There goes a motorbike. Calm down. As you can surely see, my big Chinese Elm bonsai has grown like absolute fury.